Tonight on Primetime Politics, Affordability Challenge.
Starting this year, we're taking the existing GST credit amount and raising it by 25% for 5 years.
The Carney government expands the GST rebate for groceries, but what impact will it have on household bottom lines? And what more is the government willing to do? We'll speak with Government House Leader Steve MacKinnon. Also, opposition Conservatives say they are willing to fast-track some government legislation. Does this signal a new tone in the Commons? We'll speak with Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer. And our political strategists are standing by with their thoughts. This is Primetime Politics. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Well, after delivering that speech in Davos last week, the Prime Minister is back in Ottawa today. This after a two-day meeting with his cabinet in Quebec City last week and a Sunday meeting with his National Caucus yesterday on Parliament Hill. Returning to focus on more domestic issues and a new GST rebate to address grocery prices and affordability.
A family of four receives about $1,100 a year with the existing GST credit. With the new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit, that same family will receive up to $1,890 this year and about $1,400 a year for each of the next 4 years.
Of course, this is a minority parliament, and the government will need opposition support to get any new bill passed. Now, late last week, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre did write the Prime Minister saying he would help fast-track policies that would, among other priorities, make groceries more affordable. But that does not mean the government has been given carte blanche. Take a listen to what we heard in question period.
Why doesn't the Liberals stop increasing grocery prices by getting rid of their inflationary deficits and taxes on food?
So what will this all mean for the 14 weeks ahead in this session? Joining us right now is the Liberal House Leader Steve MacKinnon. Minister, thank you for being here.
It's great to be with you, Michael.
Listen, let's begin with the GST announcement made by your government today, now termed the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. Now, you heard the opposition. This benefit, they say, will barely pay for a grocery trip each month. And if you really wanted to help Canadians, your government, they say, would tackle things like the packaging tax, the industrial carbon tax, because those would, Conservatives argue, drive down prices for everyone, not just those targeted by this program. What's your response to that?
Well, firstly, this is a very substantive package of affordability measures. This is a check that arrives quarterly in the bank accounts of 12 million Canadians. The one-time payment is meant to bridge that difference in food prices vis-a-vis inflation, which has been tamed, but we did have a spike, of course, in food prices post-pandemic, and this has been designed to deal very, very squarely with that. So this is a very substantive measure. With respect to the Conservatives, well, they are quite bereft of suggestions. These imaginary taxes that they continue to talk about have been disproven, debunked in every possible way as contributors to added costs for Canadians. These are not factual assertions from Conservatives. The fact is that they do this because they're masking the fact they have no policy with respect to affordability. Our policy, you heard the Prime Minister present today.
Yeah, except, with all due respect, you know, you adopted the consumer carbon tax, cutting it, and your government made these, well, not your government, but the previous Liberal government made the same argument that it doesn't really add to people's bottom lines. And here we have Conservatives once again saying, if you want to help every Canadian, expand where you're cutting taxes. Are you willing to consider that as a government?
Well, let's deal with the carbon tax for a second. The carbon tax proved to be a very divisive measure, and we will have
your government still sells it as an affordability measure, though. Cutting it is still being sold as an affordability measure by your government.
We will have a comprehensive, of course, climate plan and a comprehensive response to those issues that won't contain a consumer carbon tax, but will deal squarely with the issue of climate change. Again, Michael, the Conservatives have no policy when it comes to affordability. They have no measures that they're prepared to propose, so they invent these straw men that are in no way contributors to food or any other kind of inflation in the country. We're going to stick to the plan that we put in place.
But you are still a minority government at this moment in time. Is your government being flexible enough to listening to other suggestions from opposition parties, the Conservatives among them?
Well, we did see Mr. Poilievre have a bit of a change in attitude with a letter that he published last week, and we're going to take up Mr. Poilievre on his suggestions and offers to work with us. Of course, we have presented these bills, and of course we want to see them passed. So where it's possible to bridge that divide, we're going to be taking up Mr. Poilievre. But in the main, the Conservatives have kind of betrayed the people that they represent. You know, Canadians in Conservative ridings are telling us that they like the Prime Minister's plan to grow the economy, to protect Canadian jobs and protect Canadian workers in the face of threats from outside of our borders. They like the fact that we're attracting $1 trillion with a T dollars in investment to the country. They like these elements of the Carney plan that we've been putting forward. And Conservative MPs don't like this obstruction, and we're just asking Mr. Poilievre to get out of the way and approve these measures that are before the country that seem to have a lot of popular appeal.
Mm-hmm. Now, you use the term threats outside the borders, and I do want to speak to you about the Davos speech, because you and I have not had the chance to speak about that since it was made last week. Your caucus met for the first time this past weekend, again, the first time since that speech was made. Since that speech, we've seen Donald Trump threaten 100% tariffs on Canadian goods. Does the caucus support the Prime Minister's decision to essentially say the quiet part out loud when jobs and the economy are very much top concerns for Canadians right now?
I think Canadians are very proud of Prime Minister Carney, and obviously the Liberal caucus is tremendously proud of the Prime Minister for very courageously naming and calling out the phenomena in the world and saying that countries like Canada, middle powers, must stick up for themselves, must develop strategies, find allies, find friends on, as we call, variable geometry, on issues where we can agree, whether it's Canada and Scandinavian countries, or Canada and Europe, or Canada with Asian countries. We're going to find allies and friends for the things that we want to advance in the world. And in the meantime, we're going to keep working on Mr. Carney's plan to protect our country, secure investment, make life more affordable, and combat crime.
I'm quickly running out of time, Minister, but do Canadians need to brace for tough economic times ahead because of that speech?
Well, you know, Michael, yes. I mean, we should always be prepared, and we're going to have measures in place that will protect Canadians and workers from external threats. But, you know, we shouldn't either obscure the good news. You know, the fact is Canada, over the past several months, has created more jobs than the United States of America. That's not more jobs per capita. That is more jobs, period. Canada has created more jobs, continued to grow our economy. Of course, we have sectors, autos, aluminum, wood, softwood lumber, all, of course, come to mind, steel. But, Michael, right now, Canada continues to grow. Canadians continue to secure good employment. So we're going to be managing through what is a better than expected situation, but putting measures in place that continue to protect our workers and our industries.
Steve MacKinnon, always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Michael.
With his thoughts on what we can expect from his party over these next 14 weeks, we're now joined by the Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer. Andrew Scheer, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
You bet. Good to chat with you again.
Listen, I want to begin with the affordability measure announced today by the Prime Minister. This increase in the GST rebate for millions of Canadians, to hear it from the government, other measures to address food affordability as well. Will your party be supporting these measures?
Well, first of all, it's important to remember that Justin Trudeau tried the exact same thing just a few years ago. Didn't stop the rise in grocery price hikes, and it evaporated with Liberal-caused inflation. So what we're saying is we'll allow this to pass, but giving Canadians some of their own money back for a temporary period of time doesn't actually do anything to permanently reduce grocery prices. A better approach would be to scrap the Liberal hidden taxes on food and food production, such as the industrial carbon tax that makes farm equipment and fertilizer more expensive, the fuel standards tax, which is going to add up to 17 cents a litre on the cost of gasoline, and of course The root cause of inflation is when governments spend money they don't have over long periods of time. That devalues the Canadian dollar, devalues the paychecks that workers bring home. That's the best way to stabilize grocery prices. Nothing that we heard from the government today is going to do that.
Okay, nothing that you've heard from them thus far. You say, though, you are going to support this measure as is. So can we expect a quick timeline on these measures?
Well, I will just point out that we haven't seen what they're actually bringing to the House of Commons. And the Liberals are famous for a big, fancy press release and a photo op, but then when the details come in, sometimes they put poison pills. For example, in their Budget Implementation Act, they put a clause that gives the power to Liberal ministers to circumvent dozens of laws aimed at protecting Canadians from the power of the government. So if they bring a clean bill that just does what they said today, we have said that we would allow that to pass. But we're going to do our due diligence as parliamentarians. We don't give the especially the Liberals, we don't give them blank checks without at least seeing, well, we don't give them blank checks at all, but we won't commit to something until we actually see it. But if they make the commitment that they'll bring in a clean bill, then we would allow that to pass.
Is that what happened with C4? You know, another affordability measure, and for people that, you know, can't follow these C numbers, you know, this is the bill that would repeal the consumer carbon tax permanently, also provide GST relief for some first-time homebuyers. That bill did take some time to make its way through the Commons. Was that it? It was not a clear enough bill for you?
No, in the Budget Implementation Act, that's Bill C-15. That's the bill that's currently before us, the Finance Committee. In that very large omnibus piece of legislation, the Liberals tried to get away with burying a clause, something called the Henry VIII clause, where governments give themselves unprecedented power, and it's called Henry VIII because we all know what happened with Henry VIII. He circumvented Parliament in a lot of ways and executed his enemies. Fast forward to, we don't have to worry about executions now in Canadian politics, but we still have to worry about greedy governments that try to, under the auspices of helping Canadians, they grant themselves unprecedented power. That's what happened with the Liberal Budget Implementation Act. C4, you know, I just point out, I know the Liberal House Leader is making all kinds of wild accusations. It's the Liberal government themselves that have scheduled debates on many pieces of legislation. Other than that, C4 is off in the Senate now. The Conservatives have a very, very small caucus in the Senate. The Liberals have a massive supermajority in the Senate. So any delays on that piece of legislation, you'd have to talk to the Liberals about.
Okay, let's get to C-15 though, because you raise that again. And to that, what does that mean about getting this budget passed? Is it in trouble?
Well, you know, what I will point out is that the main budget motion passed in the fall. So that the government has all the tools it needed. It claimed it needed to address this crisis. They have that. They're not waiting on the opposition. When the House of Commons passed that budget motion, when they passed the Ways and Means vote, all the measures that were in the budget, basically all the taxation measures and spending measures, that was already approved. So they can't. The Liberals can't point to anybody but themselves for the continued cost of living and affordability crisis that's facing Canadians, caused by Liberal inflation, Liberal taxation. So in Bill C-15, the reason why why we're concerned about it is we can support measures that reduce red tape. Conservatives are the party of streamlining government and getting rid of costly red tape. Conservatives are the party of tax relief. We are the ones that have been crying out on behalf of taxpayers, championing the working class in this country to provide more tax relief. If the Liberals want to do what they've done in the past, where we've forced them to split off sections of bills because they've put those poison pills in, if they want to come back and say, okay, look, can we at least agree on certain clauses that will provide tax relief, or that will at least not do any further harm on taxation, we've said, yeah, let's work cooperatively on that. But we're not going to give blank checks to Liberals when we've seen in the past, when they weaken transparency and accountability provisions, they help themselves. This Liberal government, it is part of Liberal DNA to help themselves at the trough. When money is being spent on behalf of the Canadian people, they line up their Liberal-friendly consultants, their Liberal donors, and they take a big portion, a big heaping plateful for themselves, and we're not going to let that happen.
Now listen, your leader wrote that letter late last week in which he says he is willing to work with the government on certain measures, affordability being one of them. What does that mean about the tone that we can expect over the next 14 weeks?
Well, Pierre Poilievre has been consistent since the last election that we respect the mandate that the Canadian people voted for. They voted for a Liberal minority government, not a Liberal majority government. It's Mark Carney who's been using backroom tactics and intimidation and pressure to try to cobble together a majority that Canadians denied him. We have said we will respect the decision of the Canadian people. We will still do our job. It's our job to hold up that microscope and that magnifying glass and make sure that every penny is being spent properly. The government has amazing, massive powers. They have the power to take money right off your paycheck. They have the power to regulate your life. They have the power to change laws. And it's our job to make sure that they don't overreach, that the money that they forcibly take off your paycheck through threat of force, behind government taxation is the government has the monopoly on force. They can put you in jail if you don't pay your taxes. So in return, they better darn well spend every penny of that tax dollar as they said they would. We've seen in the past Liberal corruption, Liberal scandals. So what we've said since the last election is, where we believe that the Liberals are not going to do further harm, they're not going to make the situation worse, we would allow those bills to pass. So, for example, C-14 is the Liberal response to the
Sorry, Andrew, I'm sorry, going to jump in. I'm sorry, I'm quickly losing time. But it sounds like the tone isn't going to change, even though that there's a letter now written by the leader that he is going to cooperate.
Well, no, I believe we've been very consistent from the get-go. We have said where there's legislation, where there's some common ground, where the Liberals have stolen conservative ideas, obviously we would support that. If their response to something like the bail crisis that they caused doesn't make it worse, well, we'll allow that to pass, and we'll see if Mark Carney's solution actually does anything on crime. So what you saw on the weekend was a response to Liberals trying to blame the opposition for their own mismanagement of Parliament, and what Pierre has said is very consistent to what he said since the last election.
Okay, Andrew Scheer, we've just started this whole new session. Looking forward to the weeks ahead. Thank you for this. Take care.
Thanks very much, Michael.
Well, let's talk about these issues and the return of Parliament with our political strategist now. Susan Smith is Liberal strategist, principal and co-founder of Blue Sky Strategy Group. Cole Hogan, a Conservative strategist, and George Soule, an NDP strategist and founder of On Step Strategies. Welcome back to all three of you.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Listen, so today begins with the government introducing this GST measure, measures for affordability when it comes to groceries. Does affordability, literally bread and butter issues, need to be the focus of this government? Because affordability, George, does seem to be the soft underbelly of the Carney government right now.
Well, I think for sure. I think you've seen Mark Carney spend a lot of time on the international stage, and much of that I know we'll get to, and I think is justified. But I think at the end of the day, none of that matters if folks can't afford to put food on the table anyway, and that's a real struggle for people. I think some of what would be hard for the Liberals to get through is this announcement is all coming in July or in June, and they're going to say, there's all kinds of bureaucratic reasons for that, but people need the help right now. We saw the NDP today mention that in 2022 there was an emergency kind of GST rebate that was sent out, and so in October the House talked about it, and by November people had those checks. So I think that kind of quicker action is needed on top of this kind of longer term stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Does this need to be a priority for the government, Susan?
I think affordability is always an issue for the government, and
has it been though? I mean, they've criticized for not moving on it enough.
So what they've been moving on is the structural pieces in the economy to create the jobs, to right-size the industries, and to put emphasis on home building and manufacturing and things like that. That's long-term affordability issues, and I think it's been harder for people to see what the short-term affordability issues are. They canceled the gas tax. That was immediate and evident to everybody. And so I think this will get noticed as well, but it's always been an issue for the government.
Mm-hmm. Cole, what do you say to that?
Sure, there was some immediate effect with the elimination of the carbon tax too. So Mark Carney and the Liberal government got to say, look, we did it, and there was some impact and effect that Canadian consumers could see right away. When I was looking through the announcement today, they said that low-income, single person would get about $170, and a low-income family of four would get $270 on this rebate. $270 is barely a week's worth of groceries for a family of four. So there's a matter of scale here, and is it enough that Canadians can see that the Liberal government is actually doing enough on the cost of living. It'll have to be, a myriad of measures, not just one small rebate that helps you out on a minor scale, and we'll see if they can actually build up to that message when they're stronger on other files.
Yeah, I do wonder about the vulnerability of the government on this one, Susan, because and I'll compare it to Joe Biden, because Joe Biden kept talking about how the economy was doing great, but he was talking about investors. But when it came to people trying to balance the checkbook, trying to afford groceries, pay the rent, they weren't seeing it. And that seems to still be the similar challenge right now for this government.
I think there are people that do feel the strength of the economy and will continue to. If you're a home builder, you're a welder, you're a manufacturer, you're working in the defense sector, those are where people will feel the impacts. That takes a little bit longer. For some Canadians, there's no question that groceries are a struggle at the moment, and I think that's what the government has moved to address. They're listening.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Conservative leader does begin this week after releasing that statement, that letter to the Prime Minister saying that he is willing to work with the government. Okay, you're rolling your eyes. I'm going to get to you in a second, but he is willing to work with the government when it comes to affordability and other issues. I'm wondering, what is inspiring this new attitude? Is this a new attitude, Susan?
What's inspiring this is the leadership review that Pierre Poilievre has this coming weekend, and the criticism that he maybe is finally hearing that all he's been doing is complain and offered not a single solution to the government. Opposition's job is to oppose, there's no question, but Poilievre hasn't put anything else in the window. So he's trying. It's weak, it's lame. He hasn't helped the budget bill pass, which will help many initiatives come forward to Canadians. But this is a desperate sign from Mr. Poilievre, who desperately needs to show the Conservatives who will be voting as to whether or not he can stay on as leader, that he can do something other than complain and say that Canada is broken. He lost members right before Christmas. We had another floor crossing right before Christmas. There are still caucus members who are nervous, and they're tired of him not providing an alternative. This is his attempt. I don't know if Canadians will buy it or not, but he's got to start somewhere.
Is this about leadership?
If the efforts from Pierre Poilievre were to appease the base, he wouldn't be doing or attempting to do nonpartisan things. If he wanted to just speak to the base, he would perhaps go harder right now than he is. I think that Pierre is trying to demonstrate that the Conservatives, because I think there's been a public clamoring for this. Pundits like ourselves and others have said we need to soften the tone. There's always the tone conversation, and work with Mark Carney and the Liberal government to get a few things done for all Canadians. And I think this is the beginning of that different approach. So we saw in his letter to the Prime Minister, Pierre Poilievre said, if there's anything you can do to lower the cost of groceries for Canadians, we'll vote for it, we'll fast track it. The other 3 points were on bail reform, crime, energy, and trade. These are things that Conservatives will vote for the Liberal legislative agenda and vote with Mark Carney to get things done for Canadians. And that's what usually everyone has been pushing for Pierre Poilievre to do. So I think that there's, a double-facing effort here to win over more Canadians, the 1 million votes that we need, in addition to satisfying the base and trying to grow beyond it so we can get more voters and win the next election.
Okay, I'm hearing Susan behind me. Go for it.
Double-face is more like two-faced. Mr. Poilievre is incapable of doing anything that isn't partisan, and if you actually take the time to read the text of the letter, it's completely loaded with partisan innuendo. He may finally move legislation through committee, but only if it's got the amendments that he's proposing. So the proof will be in the pudding, the proverbial pudding on that, and I'll wait to see. And I think this is entirely about his positioning in advance at Calgary this weekend.
Liberals want Pierre Poilievre to be more conciliatory and more nonpartisan and work with the Liberal government. Here he is. I think Canadians will reward him for it.
Is it conciliatory? I was listening to Question Period today. I don't know how conciliatory it was, George.
In the statement, they said if there's anything you can do to lower the cost of groceries for Canadians, we'll vote for it.
Yeah, but while I punch you in the face at the same time, that's not conciliatory.
Okay, George?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, the tone of the letter is anything but conciliatory. Yes. I mean, it's pure Poilievre. But I also think Susan's also wrong that this has nothing to do with the convention. I think Cole's right on that one point, is that the convention wants more of the fire and brimstone, the stuff that's turning everybody off. But the issue is some of that everybody that's being turned off by Pierre Poilievre are the members of his caucus. And so where the kind of, hey, we can work with this progressive conservative government that has labeled themselves as liberals, that's what his caucus is telling them. So Pierre Poilievre needs to do more of that, because his conservative MPs, especially those from most of the country outside of Alberta, are feeling more and more comfortable with where Mark Carney is taking his government. So Pierre Poilievre needs to acknowledge that and show that he's willing to take those conservative policies that Mark Carney's putting forward and support them. He can't just oppose them the way he was opposing Justin Trudeau.
Okay, but what's the litmus of that, though? Is it just these nice words, or does he have to actually show some type of compromise?
Yeah, like I think that's the difference, because if we look at Davos, like in particular, that was a great speech, and Pierre Poilievre, in the spirit of nonpartisanship, once again said well-crafted and eloquently delivered speech.
Because the whole world was saying that, but again, I don't think it's different. I think it's a case of a leader saying, where are my people going? Oh, I need to run ahead of them so they can follow me, and that's particularly, again, with his caucus. His MPs will want to vote for these things. So he has to say, we're going to vote for these things. And so that it looks like they're following him rather than him going where he has to go, because that's what they're pushing.
You talked about nice words, but in this, there's 3 paragraphs that open this letter. Can we feed ourselves despite your rhetoric? Can we fuel ourselves despite your rhetoric? Can we defend ourselves despite your rhetoric? He's taking the speech that the Prime Minister made at Davos that received acclaim around the world, across the country and around the world. And this absolutely is a partisan charge. So we'll see what Mr. Poilievre does. I think it's right. He's got to show to caucus, because there are caucus members that are nervous and may cross the floor.
Okay, let me jump in very quickly. I was going to play a clip here, not enough time, but I do want to talk about Davos because before we're done. It happens, he gives a speech, worldwide acclaim, everybody except Donald Trump has gotten under Donald Trump's skin. How wise was that speech? Yes, he said the quiet part out loud, but did he need to, when we are at this point about to negotiate the free trade deal with the United States and Mexico?
We're not negotiating the free trade deal. They're reviewing it.
Well, they're reviewing
it. But let's think about, take a step back and look at...
Which will either lead to renegotiation or not.
Sure,
let's be fair.
Okay, fair, Michael. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Donald Trump can wake up in a foul mood because he stubbed his toe or he has a hangnail. Mark Carney got up at a very important global forum and said what needed to be said. People applauded his thoughtfulness on it. He also set the table for the kind of trade deals that Canada is going to be looking to continue to do in the world. He basically said, we're not going to align on every partner on every level of value, but we're going to values. We're going to find the best match that we can, and we're going to do a deal, because the hegemons can't do it anymore. There's 2 hegemons in the world. Pretty much everybody else is a middle or a small power. So he set the table so that the middle powers know what they're dealing with Canada and are ready to start to have those conversations. And I think it needed to be done. It was a very, very important speech in global history, actually.
Did it need to be done, Cole?
I think there was there's some great language and rhetoric in the Prime Minister's speech talking about the middle powers getting together to address Trump, even though not addressing him by name in this speech. We still got the backlash that we expected. So I think there was some absolute merit and substance to those arguments, but it was still, to Poilievre's letter that was read out loud there, it was just rhetoric, and people can't eat speeches. So if we're looking at, the conversation where we're talking about, like, the Liberals do this. Mark Carney did this when he announced his Liberal leadership campaign. He went on Jon Stewart's show to soft launch his leadership race. He did multiple trips to Washington and the States during the election. And now, whenever they want to try to set the domestic news agenda, they go to a foreign platform to do it, to try to dominate the news sphere. And they're quite successful in doing it. So I'll be watching if they do it again the next time they want to control the central narrative.
Okay, George, necessary or not?
Well, yeah, just to your question, I think it's too, I'll agree with Susan on the point of Donald Trump's Donald Trump. And, the European nations saw that, where he has deals signed with them, but as soon as he got mad at them, he was bringing in tariffs as well anyway. So I think, whatever agreement Donald Trump, we are able to get with Donald Trump isn't, never mind the paper it's written on, it's not worth the paper he wipes his butt with. He just throws these things out. What I do want to see, though, from Mark Carney is a firmer stance in actually dealing with Donald Trump head on. Just an example of this board of peace that Donald Trump put together. Mark Carney was invited to join it with such peaceful luminaries as Vladimir Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Tony Blair, and never actually said no. He always said, in principle, I support it. We're looking at it. It wasn't until he gave this speech and then Donald Trump actually uninvited him that he's not on it. And so he just needs to be more clear. It's this big speech that took a lot of attention and I think was important, but it's not followed up by actual actions or even strong words against Donald Trump directly, which is where Canada needs to be now. We can't partner up with this guy. He's way beyond any validity at all.
Okay, well, that starts out the session. We've got a whole winter's break to get through. Susan, Cole, George, thank you very much. Thanks. Good to have the gang back. But sadly, we do have some other news to share with you this evening, as a moment of silence was observed in the Commons this afternoon, paying tribute to former Trudeau Cabinet Minister Kirsty Duncan. Her death was announced today. She had been battling cancer and was only 59 years of age. Our thoughts are with her family, her friends, and her colleagues. I'm Michael Serapio. We'll see you again tomorrow.